Hi, and welcome to That's Ready Mysterious. Join me for an intriguing look into real-life mysteries. Who was the mad gasser of Mattoon? What was whaling at the Wilga waterhole? I'm not going to solve those mysteries, but they'll be interesting to learn about. I'm your host, Kelly with an I. Transcripts and references for all episodes can be found at that'sreadymysterious.wordpress.com. No apostrophe and no exclamation point. Today's tale is about the 1924 Mount Everest summit attempt. Noel Odell, witness to the attempt, wrote, "There was a sudden clearing above me, and I saw the whole summit ridge and a final peak of Everest unveiled. I noticed far away on a snow slope a tiny object moving and approaching the rock step. A second object followed, and then the first climb to the top of the step. As I stood intently watching this dramatic appearance, the scene became enveloped in cloud." Did they make it? Mount Everest is located in the Mahalangur mountain range and is located on the border of China and Nepal. The summit of Mount Everest, which was originally measured to reach 8,840 meters or 29,002 feet, is located on the border of Nepal to the south and Tibet to the north. In 1955, the measurement of the peak was revised to 8,848 meters, or 29,029 feet, and that measurement stands today. The mountain was discovered by George Everest. In 1921, it could only be scaled from the north side because Nepal had closed the mountain to foreigners. The May 1924 edition of Popular Mechanics ran an article titled "Storming Earth's Highest Citadel," with the subheadline, "Mount Everest's Desolate Summit, a Challenge to Man's Endurance." By the time the article was published, the outcome of the venture was still unknown, but the attempt was already underway. Editor at the time, Raymond J. Brown, explained that although the outcome was unknown, the risks of the venture were not. The oxygen-deficient death zone starts at 8,000 meters, or 26,247 feet elevation. The death zone is so named because it's the altitude at which the air pressure is so low that humans cannot inhale enough oxygen to survive. The atmosphere at the summit of Mount Everest contains less than half the oxygen that is available at sea level. It's also always bitter cold because the air is too thin to effectively trap or generate heat. Food can't safely be cooked because water boils at about 72 degrees Celsius or 161.5 degrees Fahrenheit at the summit. For the same reason, hot beverages cannot be used to counteract the cold. The 1924 expedition to summit Mount Everest was under the Mount Everest Committee of London, England. It was the third attempt to summit the mountain. All the members of the dozen explorers were veteran climbers. The members included George Herbert Lee Mallory as leader, along with his climbing partner Andrew Coman Sandy Irvine, who was 22 years old at the time. Captain Jeffrey Bruce and his brother Brigadier General Charles G. Bruce were also both along for the attempt. The Brigadier General was the commander of the expedition. The latter, Bruce, was one of two, along with Captain George I. Finch, to attempt to summit the mountain in 1922. They reached within 518 meters, or 1,700 feet of the summit, reaching the altitude of 8,364 meters, or 27,441 feet. At the time, that was the greatest altitude reached by man outside of an airplane. During the 1922 expedition, Bruce and Finch were only making progress at about 258 meters, or 880 feet per hour. It would have taken them 5 hours to reach the summit from their stopping point, but they couldn't continue on. George Lee Mallory was quoted as saying, "I can't see myself coming down defeated." He was a veteran climber and British explorer. He was a very good climber. He was also involved in a previous attempt in 1922. Mallory was one of the first to die in the mountain. He was last seen alive on June 8, 1924. Because of Mallory's prowess in climbing, there has been a lot of speculation as to why he chose Irvine, who was not a good climber, as his partner. Irvine could have easily gotten the pair killed, but he was very mechanically inclined and was constantly tinkering with and making improvements to the team's O2 tanks. However, other members of the team were much more experienced climbers. Noel O'Dell had climbed up from the lower camp to await Mallory's return from the summit. He said that he saw Mallory and Irvine at 12:50 p.m. going strong for the summit, at the top of the prominent rock step at a very short distance from the base of the final pyramid. When it came to which step O'Dell was referring, even he wasn't sure. He was asked so many times that by the time of his death he couldn't separate his memory from the guesses. An ice axe was discovered at 8,443 meters, or 27,700 feet, just below the first step, during the unsuccessful 1933 British expedition. Finding the axe created a long-standing belief that Irvine may have fallen and dragged Mallory down with him. In 1979, two North Face climbers met and talked. The first, Chinese climber Wang Hongbao, told the second about having found a body at 8,100 meters, or 26,575 feet. Wang explained that he had taken a short walk from his team's Camp 6 and came across a body he described as an English dead. Wang said the man was seated, wearing old-style natural clothing, with holes pecked through his cheeks by scavenger birds. Wang died in an avalanche before he could explain further. In 1999, German climber Jochen Hemleb and Himalayan guide Simonson launched a research mission to find the site of the Chinese Camp 6 and the English dead, who they expected to be Irvine. On May 1st, after more than a month of searching, the expedition discovered an area littered with half a dozen bodies. The area was a sort of catch-all for everything and everyone that falls from the northeast ridge of the mountain. Within just 2 hours, Conrad Anker found a body with gleaming skin showing through wool and cotton canvas clothing. The body was remarkably intact, most likely because it melted out of the snow only a handful of times over the years. The climbers took pictures and conducted a thorough examination of the body. There was a label on the shirt that read G. Mallory. This led one of the climbers to ask why Irvine was wearing Mallory's shirt. Then someone realized they had found George Mallory himself. Weeks after the discovery, Mallory's body was returned to Ashford, England. Simonson, meanwhile, still had the artifacts recovered from Mallory's body. Dave Hahn, another member from the 1999 expedition, explained that Mallory was wearing less clothing at the top of Everest than people in Seattle, Washington wear during the winter. Some of the artifacts were significant, like Mallory's tinted goggles tucked into his inside pocket. These would have been necessary at high altitude. It seems that wherever they went, Mallory and Irvine were on their way back to camp when they died. There was a broken rope tied to Mallory's waist, indicating the two climbers were tied together and probably died together in a short fall. The biggest clue, however, was found much later, in the margins of one of the letters found on Mallory's body. In the margins, Mallory had written a list of numbers and pressure readings, the inventory of O2 bottles stored at the highest camp. The list showed they had more oxygen than previously believed. They each had 3, not 2 bottles. This led people to believe they had made the summit and then died on the way back down. During the expedition, Simonson had pointed out an old oxygen bottle to the climbers. He had seen it just below the first step on his way to the summit. It was found in that exact location in perfect condition. The bottle was from the 1924 expedition. The number on the bottle matched a number on the provision list. The rest of the O2 bottles used during the expedition are still up there somewhere. Based on departure times, available sunlight, and duration of the old British oxygen cylinders, Simonson's group says that Mallory could have made the summit, but they do not have absolute proof of that. To suggest they made the summit is to suggest that Mallory and Irvine were capable of free climbing the second step without the help of a ladder, which was put there in 1975 by the Chinese expedition and was used by all of the following expeditions. Anker free climbed his way to the top in 1999, so it is possible, but Anker is one of the world's best free climbers and says he doubts they could have made it. Even if they would have been capable of making the summit, the timelines for Mallory's summit trip and safe descent don't line up. The climbers had left their lights on in their tent on summit day, and some say it's impossible to descend second step in the dark. There is some other circumstantial evidence that Mallory and Irvine made the summit. Mallory carried a photo of his wife with him, which he said he'd leave at the summit. The photograph was not found on his body, so what happened to it? Members of Simonson's group disagree on whether or not the pair made the summit. Popular belief is that they only made it to the second step, which is an altitude of 8,620 meters, or 28,280 feet. The camera that they brought along could have shown that they had made the summit, but it was missing. Whether or not Mallory and Irvine made it to the summit, the expedition is still one of the greatest exploits in mountaineering history. Did Mallory and Irvine make the summit of Mount Everest? What do you think? Leave a comment and let me know what you think. Thanks for listening to today's episode of That's Ready Mysterious. Join me next week for another captivating mystery.